And we are live. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to another live stream from Kosmographia, the Randall Carlson podcast. Kyle and I were not here for the last live stream, which I understand was excellent, but it was about the sacred geometry workshop you guys did this weekend. Do you want to talk about that a little bit? Randall, you did some sacred geometry and then visited the, was it the Nashville Parthenon?
Yes, this is true. These aren't just rumors.
They're not just rumors.
This actually happened.
It did take place.
Welcome back, by the way. I'm happy to have you on the board.
Yeah, we did a sacred geometry weekend up in Nashville at the West Phoenix Masonic Lodge. The couple of brothers there hosted it, and it was great. We had a full house in-house, 60 seats filled, and we did a live stream that came off pretty decently. I think we had close to 300 people participating. So
Randall,
yeah, it was great.
Get that microphone up.
How about this?
There we go.
I'll tell you
That's
what,
better.
let me testing. How does this sound? Does this sound better?
Crank that little screw down there too. It's already loosening up. That one on the end, not the.
Yeah, I'm going to get
that one
mic stand, but
yeah, that one needs a lock washer or something there.
Yep. Well, I'm going to keep upgrading, and new mic stand is high on the list. So anyways, yeah, it was. I think it came off real well. I mean, we had 60 in-house participants. All the seats were filled. We had a lot of fun. Made a lot of new friendships. Saw some old friends, and yeah, and then we did an outing to the replica, full-scale replica of the famous Parthenon in Athens, Greece, and Nashville has created this full-scale replica, and it goes back to the centennial that they had. Brad, do you remember? Was it 1894?
1896, I believe.
1896. Yeah, there we go. I should have remembered that. 1896. So they built a sort of a plaster replica of the Parthenon, along with a whole bunch of other structures and stuff for this centennial that were left up for 6 months. And then they started demolishing it all. But people had grown so fond of the Parthenon that they wanted to keep it. So they didn't tear the Parthenon down that was built out of plaster, basically molded plaster. And it was only designed supposedly to last, for the length of the centennial, which was going to be 6 months. But they kept it on for about 20 years. And of course, by the end of that 20 years, it was in pretty decrepit circumstances. So a lot of people came together, benefactors and philanthropists and wealthy citizens of Nashville, raised the funds and built a full-scale replica of the Parthenon, whose ruins now stand on the Acropolis in Athens, Greece. And took them, so a full 10 years, or it was 20 years to complete the project, wasn't it?
To rebuild it, that sounds right.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was no overnight venture.
No, it wasn't. And of course,
the thing's huge.
It's huge. And then when you begin to look at all the statuary and the sculptures in the pediment up there, like right up on above your head, and yeah, it's an amazing piece of work. So I think, and I really enjoyed Nashville. Seemed like a good vibe there. And it's a big enough city that it's got everything you need, but it's a little bit more manageable size than, say, the urban area of some of the big cities around the U.S. that have millions and millions of people and super congestion. But yeah, there it is, right there behind Brad.
You can we actually went downtown today with Ryan and Warren that have been on a couple of the podcasts with you recently, and we went to this Parthenon is at Centennial Park, right? So the 100-year anniversary of Tennessee. And so we today went to Bicentennial Park. So that's why I remember the number, because it was 1996. It was 200 years for them. And that, of course, was the year they were doing the Olympics in Atlanta, right? So that's stuck pretty strongly in my head. We were both there for that, and Atlanta's changed a whole lot since then.
Oh yeah.
But yeah, you'd be really impressed with all the wall of a billion years of Tennessee history and lots of geology, and they've got a huge map of the state laid out in the sidewalk, and like an exaggerated topographic map there. Yeah, really interesting place, and it's a big open grass field going up to a 3-tiered hill that the Capitol is built on top of, right in the middle of the city. And it's, there's some questions there, and I'm sure you would love to see it. Is this an ancient, monstrous mound?
Monumental mound structure?
Built prior civilizations that were there.
Wow.
So yeah, I'm really curious about looking into some of the mapping and see where some of the other Hopewell and sites were in relation, and if it's central in some way. But I think it's probably twice as tall as the mound at Cahokia, which I think was like 90 feet high.
Yep.
It was a lot bigger than that, but it was previously a Catholic church was on the top of it there, and they're have a tendency, right, to take over prior sacred sites. So who knows what was up there several hundred years ago. So yeah, we definitely have to get back there and get you to walk around that Bicentennial Park. But as you're saying, it's not the hustle bustle. It was a Monday. There weren't many people out there. We walked to the Capitol up on the hill. Like I said, it was silent. There wasn't much traffic. It was really a beautiful day to go out, and yeah, you see, I got some sun out there. So wish you were there for it. But yeah, people, interesting, not just this Parthenon, but multiple things there in Tennessee's capital in Nashville.
Yeah, in fact, I think let's see here if I can pull up a photo of, oh yeah, here we go. This is a good one. The Capitol itself, let's see, here is quite an impressive and beautiful structure. Here we go.
By the way, Brad, did you try the turning on the original audio on your Zoom? Maybe that will fix the volume problem. Click that on.
Let's hit it.
Check Telegram too.
So,
Alrighty.
Kyle, are
Yes,
you
sir.
seeing this picture?
Yes, I am seeing that picture.
Okay, take a look at the columns.
Okay, switched it.
Yes.
And you'll notice the top of the column capitals. If you actually were to zoom in on that, you'd see that they're spirals. They're volutes, I think you would call them. And that indicates a certain architectural style.
The capitals,
in this case, the capitals on the columns.
Okay.
You see my cursor?
Yes.
Yeah, right up here. Let's see what else. Oh yeah, and there's the sofa that you.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. Well, that wasn't. Okay, well, that's the sofa you sit on when you're viewing. So those are Ionic capitals. Let's see if we got another image here. Here's one. I can't help but be reminded when I look at this. I'm going to do another stop. Are you seeing the new picture? Or do I need to stop?
I'm seeing the picture. You're zoomed in. The capitals are there in the lower left.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Now we're zoomed out. Yeah.
There. Now you can see the curl.
It's like a scroll unfurling.
Like a scroll. Yes, like a scroll. And of course, the columns are fluted, and I believe these have the property called entasis, where the column widths are not perfectly uniform, so that as the columns go towards the top, the width of the columns changes, so it creates a perspective that the column is uniform diameter all the way to the top. I'm looking at this cupola on top, and I'm wondering if that's inspired by the great lighthouse of one of the seven wonders of the world. Oh,
This
gosh
is a
darn.
giant one on a rock in the middle of the ocean.
Yeah.
Let me look it up.
Yeah. Look up Seven Wonders of the World. The lighthouse. God, what was the name of that lighthouse again? This is the kind of thing I should.
Maybe the chat's got it, huh? They're on
Somebody
a delay,
in the chat
though.
knows.
Yeah, somebody in the chat will know, but they're on a delay.
The Lighthouse of Alexandria.
No,
Alexandria.
there it is.
I was gonna say it, but I didn't
Damn
want
it.
to get it wrong.
Yeah,
Didn't they
okay.
find
that
pieces of-
does
yeah.
that does look like it.
Yeah, doesn't it though? Doesn't it remind you a bit there?
A bit.
A bit.
Yeah,
A bit, yeah, just a bit. So that's what I'm kind of thinking, that maybe that Lighthouse of Alexandria was the inspiration for the cupola on top of the Capitol building. Now don't look at the column capitals on the Parthenon there behind Brad. They don't have
right.
the volutes.
They're just.
It's a different
square.
architectural style. It's actually the simpler of the 5 architectural styles. This one's called the Doric.
Now, what about like the ones in Egypt that have the big, the lotus flower they call it, or whatever the flower shape?
The Greek counterpart of that would be the Corinthian, which has the flowering stuff growing at the top, which I think has some pretty interesting symbolic significance, because the idea behind that, when you see the living thing at the top of the column, is that the column is channeling life force up from the earth, up the stone. The stone of this Parthenon it's a Tennessee limestone, all quarried, and then the rest of it's a combination of quarried limestone and cast concrete. But yeah, I mean, it was a really awesome place to hang out. So we went there. We saw it at night when it's all lit up. That's impressive. And then we went back the next day. Let's see here. I bet you we can find a nice. I took pictures. I haven't loaded them onto my computer yet.
So, Brad, are you still out there? You're still out in Tennessee?
Yeah, I'm in Nashville.
Okay.
Just like 5 miles south of downtown. So yeah, it's a nice city. We're gonna look around some more tomorrow. There's a bluff north of the city that's got a park on it with some, like, up to, I think they told me 12 miles of trails, and there's several spots you can see long distances toward the city. Maybe a Beeman Park. So yeah, we're gonna take a hike up there tomorrow and then move on. I'm heading out to see some family.
All right. How many road trips this year does that make for you? How many days on the road?
I'm not sure that I stopped. It's probably 4 for sure, and then I'm gonna drive out to the Scablands tours for next month too. So those are about filled. There might be 4 or 5 spots. So if people are thinking about coming out with us in late September this year, see the Scablands, now is the time to get in there with us.
Now is the time. That's right.
Yeah, we had several people from the class that signed up this weekend. So that's getting the numbers that are remaining pretty low.
Yeah, I think the first week sold out, isn't it? Maybe second week is.
They're both real close if they're not sold out yet. Yeah.
If not, it's close. That's right. And we'll go ahead while Randall's looking for some photos there. That the live stream has been re-uploaded. It is ready for viewing by the people that were there in the class and the people that ordered it to watch it as it happened live, and anybody new that purchases could buy it right now and start watching it right now.
Yeah.
And so well, I was just going to give the link to that, and hopefully we're going to, if it's not there now, we'll get it in Randall, we'll get it in the
no problem.
The description, howtube.com SG with RC. Howtube.com SG/SG with RC.
All right, I'll see if I can put that.
$72, and Randall did a additional lecture Saturday night that really wasn't part of the plan. So it's a good bit more than the 10 hours that was promised for the $72 price.
Yeah. So also I'll mention that that's kind of it's introductory material to help prime the pump for the more the course that we're putting together to launch this fall, which is going to be sacred geometry in all of its modern and ancient ramifications. And it's going to be just pretty much organized around the same kind of approach as this class was. It'll be hands-on using the ancient methods of geometric construction, but it'll also include some animations, a lot of graphics, and digital ways to use sacred geometry for digital design. So it's gonna be a pretty interesting course. So this last weekend was essentially an introduction. That's not going to replace the beginning classes, but it will certainly complement them. So just want to let people know that that's coming, and it's pretty much going to be oriented towards practical applications. So people who are engaged in any kind of creative enterprise, building, designing, weaving, stained glass, mosaic tiles, quilting, digital design, garden design, architects, landscapers. I mean, we could go on and on. Musicians. That's where you're going to be coming in, Kyle.
Yeah, I'll give it a shot.
Well,
I'm already working on it.
That's what I mean.
Some stuff done.
Yeah, so maybe what you're doing musical compositions using some of those same ratios.
Yes.
That are so potent in sacred geometry. I think that would be a very interesting segue.
Yeah, and there's also
there's
like clever ways to embed it into musical compositions, which I'm just barely scratching the surface on. So
yeah,
I feel like a total noob, but it's actually really awesome when you like get it in there, and it's like, I don't know, it's just very cool to me.
Mm-hmm.
It's like a little hidden gem, and also it adds to the music itself,
Mm-hmm. Oh yeah.
So
yeah,
cool.
and I figured while you're doing that, I'm going to kind of be listening in from the sidelines, and because a lot of what I'm interested in my knowledge is deficient, is how sacred geometry could be applied to music, as it has been in the past, music and poetry. And I think it has to do with the tempo, it has to do with the pauses, it has to do with the overall structure, like of a poem. And my focus, of course, has been more on the visual aspect.
Right.
How do you use it for building and architecture and design? And also some, how an artist would use it, because it was typical for many of the great artists to employ sacred geometry to develop I would say a compositional tool, that they could create a matrix that they could put on their canvas, and then that helps them give a framework for the composition of the painting. And maybe I'll pull up a few examples. I think maybe I did in did we do that at all? Did we look at that in any of the previous podcasts? If not, I will tonight. I'll pull up a few examples.
I know we've looked at a few paintings, but I mean, I definitely,
okay.
I'm sure there's a lot more to go through.
Oh,
you
yeah.
just kind of pointed out some stuff here and there.
Well, I should go ahead and show. Let's see. Well, I'll get it up here.
All right. Well, while you're pulling it up, I got some people to thank here.
Yeah.
Christopher, $50, $49.99 says, "Gentlemen, let's go. Knowledge gap attack, as above, so below."
I like the sound of that.
That's right. Thanks, Christopher.
Thank you, Christopher.
And then we have we got a question from Matt Shy, Another $49.99 says, did the original Parthenon let light in or have an open ceiling?
I don't think so, but don't quote me on that.
Don't quote him, folks.
I don't think there was any light let into the
quote. Don't quote him. End quote.
Quote. Don't quote me. End of quote. Tell you what, Matt, let me see what I can dig up here. I don't think so. I don't think it, it didn't have skylights.
No skylights?
No skylight. Well, they may have had a few acrylic skylights in there, but other than that, no, I don't think it had skylights. And, I don't know how to pronounce the damn word. I'm going to look it up right now. The inner porch certainly was not lit up with outside light. The pronaos, which is the front, like the front porch, maybe, there was a doorway there, a wide doorway. So if that was open, you would have had light in there. I don't think that the main hall, which is called the naos, I don't think that had any outside light. But I will mention that the Parthenon in Nashville has a 42-foot statue replica of Athena, and apparently it's the largest indoor statue in America. And she's there when you walk into that main hall, sitting there with this gigantic shield that was, God, what was it, 20 feet in diameter or something? Filled with just imagery, symbolism. Yeah, I mean, there was so much to see. I wished I could have had more time. I would like to have gone through and looked at all of the exhibits and things in there. The artwork was incredible. So I'm definitely going to be headed back to Nashville. And now we know some good people live in the area up there. Warren and Ryan, who organized this event, really did an outstanding job. And they could, I think they need to be recognized for pulling this thing together. And then, of course, Mike Howtube, was a collaborative effort between Warren and Ryan on the Nashville end and Mike Howtube to organize the live stream event. And I think it came off with only some very minor glitches. The glitches were on the, on the boys' end. They weren't on Howtube's end. But they were minor and got fixed quickly. So we were able to keep right on going. And I think from the feedback we got, the in-house event was very successful. People really enjoyed it. The only part about it that I was not satisfied with is the same thing I'm always unsatisfied with. We just don't get to everything that I want to get to. That was, I could have gone, well, let's go for another day. But Bradley, I think, remembers this, when I was doing a series, my first in-depth series was done in Asheville, North Carolina. And we would do weekend workshops, similar to what we just did, starting at the basics, working through. Would do three months on for one weekend of the month. We'd take a month off, and then another 3. So that's, what is that then? For 3 for every 3 months. So that's 12, right? Or no, 9. That's 9 classes in a year. So we did 2 years, 18 weekends to get through the entire program and get into the really juicy, interesting stuff. But there's a lot to it. People don't realize, that there's a lot to it. And it's not, you have to put some effort into it if you really want to master it. And I'm not going to claim I haven't mastered it yet. But this second go around, because essentially we were doing these workshops and classes for years, both for adults and for homeschoolers, like I talked about, for kids and young people. And then we took a sabbatical. We shifted over and focused on the geological stuff and all of that primarily. And, a lot of major building projects that we undertook that, we've scaled back the building side of it now to smaller projects, so that otherwise I have no time. If I had that schedule that I had 15, 20 years ago, we wouldn't be able to do this podcast right now. It would be too much. But now what I'm seeing here is that by going through this material again, it's going to really, I think, embed it. And that's what you got to do. It's just like any craft that you try to master. It requires repetition.
And even if you take a long break, when you come back, you got to do it all. You got to do the rep. I mean, you'll get it after you start doing the repetition. I'm comparing this to like playing something on an instrument.
Yeah.
You can learn an entire song. And then if you take a long break, when you come back, you may remember the song and you may remember it in your head, but to get all the motions back down, you got to work on it and do the repetition again and again. I'm actually going through that right now. It's a pain
but
in the ass.
it's in anything. Yourself, if you're trying to master a musical instrument, it's repetition.
It is.
Over and over and over again. And it can maybe get a little tedious, but at the same time, when you see yourself progressing and improving, that's a very satisfying feeling.
It is, yeah. And there's a point at which you don't have to think about it anymore, and that's really awesome.
Exactly. We don't. And that was one of the things that I would, given that we were in a Masonic, we held the event in a Masonic lodge, and which was a nice place. The one complaint I had about it was we had no natural daylight in there. And of course, that's the nature of Masonic lodges, is that they are,
they're dark.
They don't have windows. But in the outer part of the building, rather than in the lodge room itself, there was plenty of glazing, and that was a really nice building, actually. But what was I about to say? Yeah, so because of the fact that there were a lot of Masons there, particularly Friday night, we had a lecture that was pretty much designed for Masons because it was talking about Masonic symbolism and so on, which in its own way is very universal. But that was one of the things I really learned when I went into Freemasonry, was in the ceremonies that you do, in the rituals and the recitations, repetition over and over and over again. And so here's the interesting thing that I realized. You think that you've extracted all the meaning and significance out of the ceremony or a lecture, but then you're going along and when in the lodge meetings, I do lectures. I'll do a lecture for each of the degrees. So I'll do the lecture for the first degree, which is about the significance of the northeast corner of a building. And some of the stuff is perfectly fine to talk about, because in the Northern Hemisphere, the northeast corner of a building is generally the darkest section of the building. It's the darkest corner. So whenever you see a building that it was built by Masons, the cornerstone will always be in the northeast corner. Always. I mean, that's how they do it. You put the stone in the corner, and in the building grows from that corner, from that cornerstone. And so the symbolic significance of that is that the building then grows from the place of greatest darkness towards the light as it's being constructed. Then, there's a lecture about the meaning of the symbols and stuff, like the letter G lecture, it's called. It's in the second degree, the craftsman or fellow craftsman degree. And then there's what's called the temple lecture in the third degree, which discusses the meaning and the story behind the building of King Solomon's temple, which is sort of a supreme incarnation of the principles of sacred geometry. So what I discovered was that as I would give these lectures, I've given those lectures, I don't know, between 50 and 100 times each. I'll still give a lecture, and in the giving of the lecture, I'll see connections and significance and meaning that I had not seen prior. Even 50 times, 75 times after reciting the lecture, I'll go, oh, Okay, I never quite saw that little nuance of meaning before. And then, of course, what you said, Kyle, made me think of this is that, when you're learning this, and I imagine it's just like when you're learning a song. Well, of course it is. I mean, when I was in a band and played percussion, we would practice the parts over and over and over again until the point where I didn't have to think about it. Okay, let me see. When is this time change coming up? I didn't have to think about it. I just knew 4 measures. Boom, I count 4 measures and we make a shift. Or in the lecture that I'm doing, it's like if you are learning it, you're constantly thinking, okay, you're kind of always thinking ahead. What do I say next? What do I say next? And I imagine it's the same thing for an actor in a play. You learn your part so well that you don't have to think about it. It's just almost automatic. Once it gets to that point, now you can really focus on the feeling, the emotion, right?
That's where you can get passionate, and
yeah, that's exactly. You know what I'm talking about.
Yeah, absolutely.
I mean, you can't cut loose, man, and really tear up a song and make people weep in their seats if you're still sitting there thinking,
hold on, wait,
if you're still trying to remember what's going on and where the hell you are in the song.
Yeah.
Hold on. I didn't do that right.
Yeah.
So overall, it was a great weekend. And just the other thing that always impresses me about these gatherings and these tours is just the high quality of people that are involved and that we meet. That's just so gratifying to me.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
All right, we got some more donors
Yeah,
here.
I got another one. This is from the Happy Plague Doctor. $10. Says, I would love to hear your thoughts on the Nebraska Sandhills one day.
I have thoughts on both Brad and I have been discussing those sandhills for years. And I think we're both in the same boat. I mean, I don't know what where your latest thinking on it is, Brett. I haven't made up my mind yet, but I am still leaning towards large scale sheet floods flowing from the western uplands as being the likely rather than wind. But we haven't. You've passed over them. You've crossed them several times. I haven't.
Yeah, I've been through a couple times, and the last time I went was on the way to the Scablands this spring, and actually we were going up to meet with Graham Hancock then, and the winds were like 60, 70 miles an hour. And I was gripping the steering wheel like I never gripped before. And there were, I forget, 6 or 7 semis that were blown over. There were camper trailers that were blown over. So thinking, okay, well, how many times does the wind blow this hard across this territory? I know they're really nasty in Wyoming lots of times, but you do start thinking, okay, wind did play a big role in the final shaping of these. But I totally think that, that quite a bit of the material for those sand hills came directly from the Badlands of South Dakota.
Yeah.
And you can kind of trace the water flow that diverts out of that main channel from Lake Agassiz coming down and heading west there. I think that was a lot of the erosion of the Badlands there. And I've actually got a image that's on my screen for my desktop pretty regularly, keeps coming up, and there's like maybe swale's not the best word, but there's an obvious routing for water that goes down through the middle of those sand hills. And, I think there's a more complete story to be told there than just the wind.
Production note, you can turn that original audio off again. I'm just going to control it manually.
So here is a ground view, the Wikipedia ground view of the sandhills. And of course, the first thing that strikes me is their resemblance to the rolling Palouse.
Yeah. It does have somewhat of a resemblance to that, except there's I don't know, layers. You can kind of see layers in this one, or maybe it's going uphill. I don't know.
I think, yeah, we're looking up. This is going uphill.
Okay. Yeah.
And how stable are these dunes? I mean, I do see that they're not like desert dunes where it's just open sand. There's vegetation.
Yeah.
Which means that the dunes have stabilized. So even though you were saying, Brad, that there was this intense wind, it didn't move. The dunes didn't migrate, did they? I'm assuming not, because if they did, then you're going to have fresh sand everywhere instead of, overgrown with vegetation like you see here. Let me go back and. So yeah, I'm inclined to think that water was involved in the initial deposition of these things, and then they were probably modified by wind, and then once the vegetation took root, then they've kind of stabilized. Here's the are you seeing this now, this aerial view?
We're seeing
it's very small.
It's a piece of coral.
Yeah, it is small
or something.
Yeah, it is. It's too small. Why is it so small? Well, so here I'm guessing this would be during the spring. Let's see. Dismal River Sandhills. That's actually kind of a beautiful landscape, isn't it? The Dismal River. You can see the sandhills in the distance there. So, in answer to the question and the thoughts on this, I think that sums my thoughts up on it, that it was water deposited sand initially, and then reshaped by wind, and then eventually stabilized by the vegetation growth on it. Let's see this one. Yeah, so this is the I guess this is an incision into the hills itself. We got let's go back to here. Are you seeing this, the golf course?
Yeah, we're seeing a little sand trap there.
Yeah, like a sand trap.
I can get out of that sand trap, no problem.
So I'm guessing that this sand trap is that underneath the thin layer of topsoil, it's probably all sand. Well, I guess we'll need to head out there and check it out.
Yeah.
But yeah, what Brad was just saying, that possibly it emanated from the direction of the Badlands. That would make sense.
I wonder if there's a way to find out, if you could somehow match it. I don't know. Sand is sand, right?
Probably.
Yeah.
Yeah, probably. Let's see.
Well, it's gonna have iron content and other things.
You're probably right.
Oh yeah, I mean its chemistry is gonna be a unique signature, and it could be correlated with with a place of origin. That's what I'm trying to say.
Okay.
Yeah, for sure.
The geological term is the provenance. The provenance of the lithology. So
all
you
right,
would say,
let's see, we got another donation from Jason. $20 says for the sanctuary. Thank you.
Thanks, Jason.
Man, thank you.
Appreciate all right,
That's cool.
We've actually opened a bank account that is going to be just for parking money, resources for the first stage of that project. So that's one thing that's been done. Now the other thing is we'll have to see how the 501c3 is coming along. Hopefully that's going to finalize in the next month or two. I don't know how long it's supposed to take, but it's been going on 6 months. And then of course beyond that, keep hunting for land. And boy, there's some really beautiful land in eastern Tennessee, Cumberland Plateau. Very beautiful. A lot of water, which is of primary importance, a good source of water. Without that, then you're handicapped.
Gotta
So
have
yeah,
good water.
as the
good water.
ideas
I
and
mean, I've been learning. Sorry to interrupt you, but
no, go ahead.
just been learning in the just being involved in agriculture for the last 6 years now. How important it is that your aquifer can produce.
Mm-hmm.
It's all about gallons per minute
Mm-hmm.
or gallons per hour that your well can produce. You can put a big pump down in there, but if it doesn't have the pressure, you'll just pull a funnel in the water because it's not seeping out of the surrounding rock fast enough, and you run out. So you can only support so many crops on one straw. So yeah, there are places nearby where there are just, you can drive an hour in one direction and there's a different aquifer coming from who knows where. Nobody really knows where these things come from, but these wells, I mean, they can pull thousands of gallons out of there in an hour.
Yeah.
They're huge and they can support a lot of agriculture. So it's extremely important, especially for a sanctuary. Good water.
Yes. Well, there is a pretty extensive aquifer system in the Cumberland Plateau area of eastern Tennessee. So that's one of the big pluses. And as I've been looking at, potential sites around the country, and, I come back to that, of course, because of the convenience to, like, where both Brad and I live, but also the fact that, water is pretty abundantly available.
That's
so
good.
That's a huge plus.
Big plus.
Big plus. Yep. And there's some pretty good soil in some of those places. A lot of timber, a lot of game, a lot of rivers, and not a whole lot of lakes, natural lakes, but there are quite a few man-made lakes that are well stocked with fish, and the streams and the rivers are well stocked with fish. So as long as there's a good spring or even a creek on the property that one can capture and make a pond that could be stocked with fish, that would be also a big plus.
Oh yeah, for sure.
All right, got some more donations here from David. $5 says super chats only give the content creator 70%. Any other preferred way to donate? So yeah, there's a PayPal donate button. There's a Patreon, right, Brad? Anything else? Donation methods are probably
right through the HowTube channel is probably the easiest way.
Yeah,
you go to howtube.com/channel/Randall Carlson. There's a donate button right there. But yeah, you would have to create an account and set up a way to pay through there. But they keep practically nothing. 90+% all goes to Randall.
All right.
And then of that, another 75% then comes out of that and goes to Brad. No, not really. Not really.
And out of that, 65% goes to me.
Straight to us.
No.
To Kyle. Goes to Kyle. I've been cut out of the deal, folks.
You're just out of the deal, bro.
Well, you got a hat out of the deal.
Yeah, I did get a hat. I had to actually travel to Atlanta and get Rowan to give it to me, though. He wouldn't even mail me one.
Yeah.
And then Rowan hits us all up for the money, and it's gone.
That's right.
Yeah, that's pretty much the end of it.
Yeah.
Goes through me to Brad, to you guys, then to Rowan.
Yeah.
And then if he's got any left, then that comes back to me. So Rowan, by the way, is my brother. In case you don't know, I have a brother too. Just like you guys are brothers, I have a brother that
we got to get.
I work with.
We got to get him on the live stream more often.
People in the chats were asking if he went to the Nashville event. Did he go?
No, he didn't.
Yeah, he usually has to stay behind to manage the biz, right? When you're out of town.
Yeah, and take care of the dogs. Got to feed those. You got those 3 big dogs. You got to keep them fed. But he's actually, I don't know how much time he spent this weekend on business. The day business. I think he was doing a lot of stuff. Setting up. Things for upcoming stuff that we've got going on here. The studio isn't finished yet, but we're going to soon be getting a couple of new cameras. couple of new microphones, and you can see the beautiful conference table ready to go, waiting for some guests to arrive. So, and then we'll do some in-house stuff. That'll be fun. It'll be different.
Yeah, that's going to be a big day when you have Sean and Ben over there and do your first live interview podcast directly with those guys, and the stories that they can tell and the news on the work they've been doing is really going to open a lot of eyes, and that's going to be exciting to get their news out there.
Oh yeah. So what's happening, just very briefly, is state-of-the-art growing laboratory for psilocybin mushrooms, and the first federally licensed facility in the country to produce sacred mushrooms to be used, of course, at this stage medicinally and under regulatory control, but it's still going to be a federally licensed facility that's legally growing mushrooms, and that's only the beginning of using these substances from nature to heal what ails the human species psychically. And this could be a huge game changer once people begin to really understand the power of these tools to affect change for the good, particularly psychological, emotional, and so on. So this is exciting stuff. So soon we'll be having them on here to talk about that and what's happening.
Excellent.
Ben, I might say, was 11 years a Navy SEAL. Saw several tours of duty, and like a lot of them, suffered from some PTSD. Went to Peru and did the ayahuasca experience. Found out about mushrooms and the power of mushrooms to psychically heal. So he began to use those. Began to treat his buddies with it that were also suffering from PTSD, and had tremendous effects, positive effects from the use of it. And so basically what happened was and he'll tell the story, and just to make sure that the details are accurately relayed, but the gist of it was that a bunch of these Navy SEALs showed up in Washington in the halls of Congress and said to these politicians, "You're going to do this." And I guess, if a dozen Navy SEALs show up in your office and say, "You're going to do this,"
yeah, you probably, yeah,
it carries some weight. So you send these guys over, they come back, with issues. And we found that the best cure-all for these issues is a magic mushroom, and you're not going to deprive us of that. So,
and as far as I understand, I think I mentioned this with us before. It's the only thing scientifically proven to regenerate brain cells and create new brain cells. So the potentials for that. For Alzheimer's patients and dementia patients and elderly folks, my family's going through that now. I know so many people do, and it's just a sad and long, slow deterioration that actually may have a source of improving the conditions. And even I've got a friend up in North Carolina that's been speaking to me. She's extremely curious because they've been using it with people in hospice. And their just general states of minds and outlooks and their perspectives on life and what may be next, and their connection is just she's so anxious to get this news out and find out what's going to be next, and just so excited about how many people can be helped. So this is going to be a great thing coming soon.
Yeah, I've read about that they're using it to ease death anxiety, right? For people who are
Mm-hmm. Well, that was what was going on back in the 60s with the programs that were being designed by Leary and Alpert and those guys over at Harvard and other institutions. And then all that got interrupted, by the law that said, this is all illegal. You can't be doing this. So we've actually got a lot of lost time, I think, we need to make up for. We lost about 4 decades of research in there because of, government outlawing something that has so much potential positive things about it, to improve society, to improve the individual. But hopefully we're seeing the beginning of the end of that. Of course, what might happen is the same thing that happened then. You see, if a lot of people start doing things to open their minds and expand their consciousness, the problem with it is that from the standpoint of the controlling elites is that then people oftentimes see through the bullshit. They're not so willing to guzzle the Kool-Aid that's being, So we'll just see how it plays out. But if enough people say, no, this is, you're not going to deprive us of this, then it won't happen. We hope.
Yeah, we hope. All right, got a donation from Xavian, $20, and he gives coordinates for. He says, "I found a huge scar in the land in Italy from a flood. Here's the coordinates." Well, it's hard for us to. Thanks for the donation, but it's tough for us to look up coordinates on the show. I would have to read them out to Randall, and he'd have to type them in.
Mm-hmm.
But thank you for the donation.
Yeah. Well, give me. Yeah. We'll say. What are the coordinates? I'll write them down here and I'll look.
To you?
What?
No. I've got it copied. I can email it to you.
Just have them send a link to the map, right?
Yeah.
I mean, that's easier.
The map
just
is better.
Send the link in that chat there, and then we can pass it on, or you guys can go right to it.
Yeah. Okay. We got £3, I think, from Luke. Says, "What are Randall Carlson's thoughts on High Brazil and the Tuatha de Danann?"
The what Brazil?
High Brazil.
High Brazil.
Yeah.
Okay. I'm not sure what that is. Now, the Tuatha de Danann, that I'm thinking is probably the same thing as the Anasazi, the Anunnaki, and the Nunahai, and a lot of these other, what we say, gods, the gods of old.
Yeah.
Who, if we're looking for a more prosaic and rational explanation, would be basically just some people that had much more knowledge, scientific knowledge and awareness than the prevailing society at the time. God, when you talk about gods, that gets us into the whole question of what is that talking about? Or is it just figments of the ancient people's imaginations? I don't think it was any more than, say, great floods were the figments of people's imaginations, or overheated exaggerations, or however you want to think of it. I would think if we're looking for a least exotic or bizarre explanation for the nature or identity of the gods that are so prolific in all the ancient cultures, it would be that they were, members of a group of people that had access to much higher science and technology and so on. Like Arthur C. Clarke said, any technology sufficiently advanced is indistinguishable from magic, right? And so if you've got a group of people who've never seen an airplane, I mean, what's the famous story about the island dwellers that had never seen an airplane and it flew?
You're talking about a cargo cult?
Yeah, the cargo cult. Yeah. Thank you. Yeah, I mean, that idea of a cargo cult. And of course, then that presupposes the assumption that there could have been there could have been people with access to some kind of higher technology or higher science at some point in history. And I don't, I think that that's an entirely plausible idea. I think that the purveyors of the dogmas of history pretty much rule that out or dismiss it, but I don't think we can continue to cavalierly dismiss that idea anymore, that there may have been scientifically advanced civilizations in the past. And, what goes along with that is the idea that to say a scientifically advanced civilization does not imply that it's going to look like ours today.
Sure.
It could look completely different.
Yeah.
And if we're out there looking for something that looks like a reflection of ourselves, we might be overlooking the evidence for what they were actually doing. And as we've talked about so much on this program, the idea of cyclical and repetitive catastrophes. And when you figure the last really great global catastrophe, the Younger Dryas, how much of the previous world that erased and completely reorganized to the point where it would be very difficult to recognize the world from pre Younger Dryas world. And then you realize that was only the most recent in a whole long series of global catastrophes. Yeah, I mean, then it gets to the, you come to the realization, yeah, there could have been a whole lot more going on than we'd previously recognized. And this is nothing pseudoscientific about, creating a model of prehistory that includes advanced civilizations. But like, Mike, normal guy Mike likes to joke about, crystal spaceships and all of that. Nobody's talking about that. But at the same time, who knows what might be possible? And I do think that there are areas of knowledge today that may give us insight into a possible alternative kind of technology. And without getting into any of the details of it, because that would be something for a future discussion, but looking at the work of people like Nikolai Tesla and Wilhelm Reich, Victor Schauberger, we might see the bits and pieces of something that could provide the basis for an alternative system of technology that could be used as a basis for a civilization that doesn't look really anything like our modern technological civilization. Because think about this, in my mind, where are we going? I mean, at some point, what are we striving for to signify that, this is now a civilization that aren't we always trying to improve the situation, improve people's lot in life, improve the cultural environment, improve our relationship with the earth and the planet and the natural order of things? If you project that on, what do you come up with? I mean, obviously there's a concept that represents that ideal. The word is utopia. But if you, Russ, say we're going to try to imagine a utopia, what would it be like? Well, to me, it wouldn't necessarily be, concrete buildings and, a lot of traffic congestion and all of that kind of stuff. It would be actually almost be more of a Garden of Eden type world. And yet
something where you could have technology that was almost invisible.
Yes,
right?
Yes, that's the point. Something where you have a technology that's almost invisible.
Yeah.
But it's still there.
It's still there. Yeah.
It's still there.
Making your life easy without affecting the landscapes.
Yes.
Yeah.
Or even affecting it in such a ways that it enhances.
Sure.
The livability, enhances the fertility, the productivity of the landscape, and so on. So that's be the direction that my thinking would be going. It's almost like, if you look at these legends of a previous order of things, whether in the Bible it's the Garden of Eden, it could be any number. There's multiple names for this idea of some kind of a antediluvian paradise. What would that be? If you were going to say, okay, well, we look at, third chapter of Genesis, and we're introduced to the idea of Noah's flood. And then we discovered that there really were these gigantic floods in the history of the earth, the survivors of which could easily think that the entire world had been destroyed because they have no way of knowing. All they know is that everything that they knew before the flood is now gone. And because of the fact that they're completely now cut off from other survivors, they have no way of knowing how extensive. Did the whole world get destroyed? Well, from their perspective, it did. But when we look at the idea of the flood, I kind of take that as a useful way of entering into this kind of thinking that, well, if we look at a lot of these idioms that have come to us from ancient traditions, using the flood as an example, we can say, okay, here's this universal story that's come down to us. And we now know that most of the lands of the earth have suffered these really big floods from time to time. And, with sea level rising rapidly, 400 feet, drowning millions of square miles of coastal plain, that could be the basis for a flood. A bolide impact into the ocean, causing tsunami waves to make landfall that are 100, 200, 300 feet in height, right? All of these things. We see now that there's actually multiple ways that we can get these gigantic world-destroying floods. So there's nothing pseudoscientific at all about that as a possibility. Well, then when we turn our attention to some of the other stories and myths, can we apply the same kind of thinking and go, okay, behind this story, behind this myth, there is a reality. And so when you start talking about the antediluvian paradise, whatever it might be called, whether it's, Hyperborea or Shangri-La or the Garden of Eden, what could have been the reality that gave birth to that story, to that myth? And for that, hey, if we can go back to 7,000 to 9,000 years ago, we actually find a time on the earth when there were some very benign conditions, in the wake of the Younger Dryas. Once the Holocene got underway into the so-called climatic optimum, when the planet was warm, think about this, all the really big predators, a lot of them had been removed from the ecosystems, and these are predators that would have been competing with humans for the top of the food chain. And so now a lot of the things that would have been eating people in the antediluvian world are gone. So you have this period between roughly 7,000 and 10,000 years ago that really was kind of almost Eden-like. And could that have been the source? I don't know. But, there were times when, and of course it wasn't a perfect paradise by any means, but it was still a place where there was lots of resources, lots of land, and few people. So there was no conflict or competition for land. There's not enough competition for territory that would have led to conflicts. That came later, after the human population increased in raw numbers. And then when the climate shifted at the beginning of the neoglacial, roughly between 4,500 and 5,500 years ago, even it depends on where, it didn't all shift at the same time at the same place, but it did shift into the neoglacial. And what that did was it changed the patterns of nature such that those who had been living maybe 2 or 3 or 4,000 years in a very relatively stable environment were suddenly thrown into chaos because the environment has changed, the growing season is contracted, the climate has gotten colder. And it's interesting that when we see in the wake of that climate shift that occurred, that has been called the neoglacial, we begin to see a rise in the evidence for conflicts among people. But when you come out of the Younger Dryas into the early millennia of the Holocene, again, the ratio of available land area to the number of people inhabiting it is huge. So there's no really reason to fight over a piece of land or the resources on that piece of land. Well, what I'm getting at here is the whole question of the Garden of Eden strikes me as much as almost a goal as what we're looking for, what we're striving for, as it is an image of our past. It may be an image of our future. If we actually come up with a way of having a stable and sustainable civilization on this planet, it would probably look something like that. But our technology, I think, is going to be absolutely mandatory because of the fact that a non-technological species is not going to be able to stop the next space rock coming in ready to slam into Earth.
Yes.
And wipe out, gigantic swaths of nature.
And it seems that if there was a, very ancient technological civilization, they were unable to stop whatever happened that caused the end of theirs.
That's right.
Yeah.
Yes.
Or they just left. That's the other possibility.
Well, if they left, then where did they go?
I don't know, but they could be on their way back.
Yeah.
If you have, if you have relativistic speeds, you just go out and then turn around and come back, and then it'll be 10,000 years later. And you've only spent a year traveling or whatever,
Oh, okay.
Classic sci-fi situation.
Yeah.
Easy.
Yeah, simple.
No problem.
All right.
Brings us back to the whole issue of who were the gods.
Yes, who were the gods?
Who are the gods? And that to me is one of the most intriguing questions of all right now out there in terms of
absolutely
discussing the implications of past history for what's going on in the world today.
That's right. And just to say, High Brazil, I think, is a kind of a lost or mythical island. And the chat was saying it was off the coast of Ireland. So that was the other part. Yeah.
Oh,
one of the lost lands.
Yeah.
It is on some maps, I think, some old maps.
Uh-huh.
Anyway, we got more donations and questions. David, 108, $108. Thanks, David. Says, loved meeting you all in Sedona. I missed the second week. What did I miss? What did you get? We missed the second week as well.
It was so awesome. Oh.
We weren't there.
Oh, yeah.
Well, we missed
it
David.
too, bro.
Where were you, man? Everybody's like, where's David? Oh, what did you? Well, let's see. We had the tour.
Yeah, you guys went on a bunch of. You went to visit a bunch of sites, and then
we got caught in a sandstorm. That was interesting.
Sandstorm, got stuck, and then you had Matheson on the second weekend, right?
Yeah,
Matheson
Dave
there.
Matheson.
Yeah.
Oh, you missed group photos.
Yeah, that's
you
what
missed a lot of group photos.
Yes, that's right. That's what you mostly missed.
Just a little dig at my buddy Dave there.
Well, so that's not Dave Matheson writing in. I thought that was David.
No, not that David.
No,
there are more than one people.
David.
Yeah,
more than one David.
More than one David.
Let's see. Rock Art Ranch. When did we do Rock? Was that the first or second week?
Man, we did that on the first Sedona trip. I remember that. Yeah, that was awesome.
That was great.
Wasn't that incredible?
Love that place. Want to go back.
Oh, I think we'll be going back.
Well, that was between the 2 weekends.
Right.
That was the day after the end of the day after all the sandstorms.
Yeah. Also, was it Blue Canyon? Blue Canyon. That was my first time at Blue Canyon. That was really impressive. Talk about an alien landscape. I mean, I was thinking the whole time I was there, what a great place to film a sci-fi movie. That's taking place on some alien planet. But that was right at the end of the sandstorm when we got in there. Yeah, that sandstorm, man, the wind was gusting, 60 miles an hour, up to 60 miles an hour. And boy, sand, when it hits you and it's moving 60 miles an hour, it can be rather uncomfortable.
Takes the paint off.
Yeah, it takes the paint off. Yeah.
Yeah, it also makes it hard to eat your lunch without chewing sand grains also.
Yeah. And then the sand gets in your hair, your ears, your nose, your mouth, your eyes, other places that shall remain unmentioned.
It only gets in Brad's beard.
But yeah, it was still kind of fun in its own way. Jesse there, my boy, he was there. He thought that was a big adventure, being in a sandstorm. Yeah, we were trying to eat our lunch there, and the sandstorm had knocked out. What town were we in? It knocked out the electricity, so we couldn't. We had to try. We're trying to make sandwiches. Trying to make sandwiches there by the side of the road, and
that was Tuba City.
Tuba City, yeah. There was as much sand as there was mayonnaise on the sandwiches. But we got our minerals for the day, I guess. But yeah, Blue Canyon was really impressive. It was.
Well, we went from lunch there to Coal Mine Canyon, right? And that's where it was really bad.
Yeah.
I think a couple people jumped up and got launched about 15, 20 feet.
Yeah. Yep. I was warning people, don't go over near the edge because a gust of wind could blow you right over. Yeah, in Coal Mine Canyon, we had, it was, not Cleve, Justido. Brother Justido. Bertram, Brother Bertram Justido, yeah. Hopi storyteller. He was our guide. And it was great. We ended up at Coal Mine Canyon, and he was telling us stories there. We were looking at petroglyphs, and that was very interesting to hear his interpretation of that. So then we had then Dave Matheson came for the second weekend, and we went out into the at night. We had some good clear nights, and we went out while he told us the mythos, the star mythos, and it's amazing stuff that he's put together. So he's going to be on the second week of the upcoming Scablands trip. So we will be doing some of that. We will be getting out under the stars, learning to navigate our way around through the constellations while we're listening to these amazing stories from all over the world. That what's so amazing about them is all of these ancient cultures were basically designing the same sky and telling the same stories. I mean, it's really quite amazing when you see what he's put together. And
so what is that? I'd like to hear your thoughts on that. Do you think that that's evidence of a precursor civilization that all of these various cultures inherited, or do they just, what is the chances that people would independently create these same patterns and tell these very similar stories with similar characters?
The details and some of the specifics of these are so aligned that you just think, no, I mean, if there was a general kind of a relationship, but I mean, in some cases it's so specific from one side of the world to the next. You go, okay, there had to have been some kind of a common source for this. And, as he says, it's like all these cultures were working from the same template. And this template linked all of the mythology of the ancient world by the backdrop of the stars. And it shows really that by incorporating the dimension, the stellar dimension, the celestial dimension, it really enhances the ability to see the interconnectedness of these ancient traditions. And I mean, again, I'll invoke the most salient example is that of the floods. It's been well known for a century and a half, at least since the work of James Frazier and others, that the universality of the flood myths. Now, how do you account for that? Well, I think the simplest thing is that ancient cultures, the majority of ancient cultures at some time or another in their history, got affected by these tremendous floods, these tremendous mega floods. Well, when you look at this, I think you have to be open to the idea that there was a template that came from a centralized source. And this is exactly the same thing that I've been saying over and over again about the utilization of geometry, the system of geometry, and the system of cosmic orienting for the layout of temples and ancient cities and sacred precincts and so on, is that, whether you're talking about monumental earthwork architecture and, the Ohio and Mississippi river valleys, or the Mayan architecture in the Yucatan, or the Gothic cathedrals, or the megalithic stone circles of northwestern Europe, or the Vedic temples of India, or whatever it might happen to be, or a Greek temple, the Parthenon. Well, I can show in a minute here an interesting example here of how geometry was used in the Parthenon. But the idea is that even though these outer expressions of these sacred buildings and sacred sites and so on is different, the template they're all working from the same template. So you have that, and then you have this amazing cosmological backdrop to the world's myth, where it appears that there's a common template behind all of these stories and depictions of these cosmic events and things. And when you put the two of those two together, then it's like, wait a minute, you got a common template here for, the creation of the outer expression of civilization itself. And then you have this whole mythic story, this archetypal mythic story that has come down through the millennia. And behind it is this framework of the heavens. And they were like all working from the same cosmic template. So I don't know, it really raises questions. It doesn't prove anything in the typical sense of, a scientific proof, but it certainly creates a circumstantial argument that there was something greater going on in prehistory that has been lost to history.
Yeah, at least it's a basis for doing more research and looking into the hypothesis.
Absolutely. Yep.
All right, we got more donations and comments and questions.
Okay.
Outdoor Wally, $20, says, guys, research brook trout. They are actually an Arctic char species. They are left over from the glacial times and are now mostly landlocked. Studying their range may be helpful evidence for the megaflood theory.
We looked it up. It's a fish. Arctic char. I didn't know what it was.
Yeah, I wasn't sure what char was either. Arctic char.
Or maybe it's char.
Char?
Not sure.
CHAR.
So that's an interesting idea because, because a lot of these, how did many of these freshwater lakes that had been completely frozen over and buried under ice, how did they get?
Yes. Where did the fish come from?
Where did the fish come from?
They rained from the sky. That's one idea.
That's our current answer.
Yeah, char, by the way. Did you say char?
Char, but then I thought it could be char, but I don't know.
CHAR.
Yes.
Yeah.
Char is the spelling.
Char. Okay.
New Phase gives $42, says, what about a Lake Bonneville tour? Randall,
Ooh.
3 reasons why we should have a Lake Bonneville tour.
There are many reasons to have a Lake Bonneville tour, and Bradley and I have already mapped it out.
Good, because I would love to do that as well.
And it could be very impressive. And what's cool about it, okay, so here's the thing, is that we've kind of figured out so you would probably begin down near in Utah, in the basin of Lake Bonneville, explore that area, and then head north through Red Rock Pass, follow the route of the Snake River, looking at all of the amazing sculpting of the landscape that was done by the flood, and then try to end up by Lewiston, Idaho, where the great Cordilleran / Missoula floods met the Bonneville flood.
Tammany Bar.
Tammany-Bar.
We'll have to get those guys to go excavate some more off of that bar.
Yeah.
I know.
Yeah, well, it wouldn't be too bad. Then we can all party at Tomy's after that.
That's what we should do.
Tommy, now, does she live there?
She's in Utah, though.
Oh,
but I'm not saying
Utah.
where.
Yeah.
Okay.
Not actually saying where, but just,
Don't totally
but
dox
she
her.
doesn't live in Tammany Bar.
No.
Nah.
She doesn't have a condo on Tammany Bar.
Thank you, New Phase. Thank you, everybody that's donating tonight. It's a great help, and we really appreciate it.
We do.
Yeah, I think that's a super good idea. I like, also now I'm making a note here, brook trout. I'm going to look into that. Great lead. That could, who knows, brook trout.
Brook trout.
And I think they make pretty good eating, don't they?
Char?
Are they a good eating fish? I think they are.
The chat's saying they're like a kind of salmon.
Oh, well.
So I imagine they're good. I don't know. All right, Michael gives $20 and says, Randall, you said in a podcast once about stone circles under Loch Ness possibly affecting people.
Did you really say that?
Did you
in a
say
podcast?
that?
Did I say that? There is possibly stone circles under Loch Ness. That's certainly possible. Just like, there appears to be some megalithic remains under Lake Michigan. Did you know
yes.
that?
Yep.
Yeah. Which I've looked into, and they were probably built between 5,000 and 7,000 years ago. When at the point I've forgotten now, I actually did a study on it. I think I sent some of my research on that to Graham Hancock. So I've forgotten the exact dates. It might have been 7 or 8 years ago when I did the research on that. Now, as far as Loch Ness, I don't remember saying anything about megaliths under Loch Ness. And
stone circles under Loch Ness,
circles,
possibly affecting people. That's what the comment says.
Oh, okay. I bet I know what he's referring to. Probably when I talked about the work of Paul Devereux. Now, because Loch Ness occupies a fault line, right? It's a huge fault line.
Oh, yes.
Crosses. And I've talked about fault lines in general, perhaps affecting peoples. So that might be what he's talking about. Now, I don't remember specifically any stone circles that I might have talked about, but certainly there are stone circles. Okay, so Paul Devereux in his work showed that a lot of megalithic remains seem to be clustered around fault lines. Okay, so that was probably the conversation right there.
Okay. Well, I think the rest of the comment is, I think he's asking, how about exposure to historic sites during Army duty? So I think what he's wanting to know maybe is, can exposure to historic sites affect you? I think yes. I mean, that just depends on what you mean by affect, right? We went to Egypt and were exposed to a lot of ancient sites, and yes, it affects you a lot. It has a huge effect. It did on us.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
But he might be talking more about like some kind of metaphysical effect or something like that due to the site's concentration of energy or something like that.
Yeah.
Maybe.
And those were related to the episode 002 clips that just came out a couple nights ago. So he's gone back and seen those quickie 10, 12-minute things, and that may be a crisscrossing of a couple of those that came together. But Randall's right. It was about the faulting in Loch Ness and then the Paul Devereux work. So, yeah, that's something that's going to keep coming out. We got the first 2 episodes with short Kosmographia clips out now on the channel, and that's going to continue in sequence. Our buddy Peter Zelenka that was on recently with Randall and did a live show with us also 4 or 5 back. He is going through in sequence and pulling out the critical discussions by Randall, and we're going to have a ongoing series of Kosmographia clips coming over as we go into the next year plus of podcast production. But ends up I don't know if we talked about this, but we recorded show 88 the other day, and it was actually on August 8th, which happened to be the 3rd anniversary of episode 001 coming out.
Since it was only the 3rd and not the 8th, it doesn't matter. Just completely, it's pointless.
It should have been the 3rd too. Well, so
wait until we do
an alignment of some numbers and some timings, and just want to thank people that are subscribing now. And these clips is going to bring even more people in, we hope, because we passed 100,000 the very next day.
Oh, yes.
So we're appreciative of all the people that keep watching. And a big part of making these short clips is so it's easier to share with your friends that you may not have something to introduce them to this work with, and they can't sit around and do the 1.5-hour, 2-hour podcast with us, but they can grasp onto these 10-minute clips of Randall. So those are going to keep coming out, and hopefully that's going to be more shareable. And the next 100K subscribers is going to come a whole lot faster than 3 years. So, yeah, thank you, everybody.
Yeah, and don't worry, buddy. You got the videos mixed up, but it's not your fault.
It was the Great Glen fault system that's occupied by Loch Ness. And there has been activity. In fact, it's coming back to me now, some of the stuff we talked about. There was a period of increased activity on this fault system, like in the 20s and 30s. And there was also a flurry of monster sightings during that same period of time. So I think that it has actually been speculated that some of the effects of the activity along this fault system could be responsible for both things that could be seen in the atmosphere, like because of maybe bubbles of gas coming up through the lake, but also the work, and we're going to get into this when we start talking about more about the Grail stories, getting into the background of landscapes and what affects the health of landscapes and how people react, psychically to changes in the landscape. But one of the things that Devereaux seems to show, along with several other researchers, is that changes in the geomagnetic field, which are affected by activity and fault lines, can actually affect people's their perceptions and their consciousness. So I think that's what he's referring to. I think that's what we were talking about.
Okay.
I have just in regards to the idea of a Bonneville tour. I'll just show a couple of. I think that would be a really exciting, cool thing to do. And let me just pull up a couple of slides here. We may have looked at these, and I think we did, but just since it was brought up, I thought it would be cool to just look back here at a couple of images real quick, like this one, for example. This is, whoops. Yeah, here's some of the sediment that was being carried in the waters of the Bonneville flood. Let's see if I can do this. Is it going to change screens on me? Probably. Let's see.
By the way, we're up on time here, Randall.
Yeah, we're up on time. So just so everybody knows, we're going to try to mention all of the donations, but we may not be getting to many more questions at this point. So Thank you all so much for the support.
Yeah, really, for sure. So yeah, this would be a very awesome tour. And we'll take your photograph next to these two behemoths here. But when you go down, there's some cool stuff to see. The Shoshone Falls, which is sort of like the Niagara Falls of the West. There's some amazing topography along the channel of the Snake, the canyon of
Wait, Randall,
the Snake River.
We're looking at a couple of pictures of boulders. Is that not what we're supposed to be seeing here?
Well, how come? That's weird. You're looking at. Are you seeing my edit screen or my presentation screen?
The presentations. I don't know. It looks like presentation with the giant basalt boulders plucked, carried, dropped by currents of Bonneville flood.
Yeah. Okay.
Thanks for all the beer money.
Are you seeing the changes now?
Yes.
Good. Okay. Shoshone Falls. This is some of the maps of the areas we've been to. Here's Brad overlooking the Snake River Canyon. So this was, very much, it wasn't on the scale of the Missoula floods, but it was damn big. And it pretty much cut this canyon you see here. So that's a lot of water. And the Perrine Bridge, that's it. You can go out over this bridge and it really gives you a really a mind-boggling view of the channel. And here you see a beautiful example of scale and variance, an underfit river. You see the modern river. Let's see, as it says up here, the modern Snake River average annual discharge 56,900 cubic feet. Highest recorded historical peak flow was in 74, 195,000. The estimated peak discharge of the Bonneville flood up to 40 million cubic feet per second.
What was the Sverdrup?
Sverdrup.
What is that?
Isn't that 1 million cubic meters?
Oh.
1 million cubic meters, yes.
Per second?
Yeah, 1 million cubic meters per second. And let me see here. Let's see. This is, we said 40 million. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And we're going to divide that by the average annual discharge. And what we'll see here is that is 700. So I'm assuming here in this photograph, the river is probably close to its average size, right? I don't think we weren't in the middle of the drought or a rainy season. So the river at this point is going to be very close to the average annual discharge of 56,900 cubic feet per second. So at its peak, the Bonneville flood would have been about 700 times the volume of the river you see here. And that would be a river, a flow of water fully capable of cutting this large channel here. So, and here's one of the basins, you know, where we've talked about this many times. When you have a constriction, water speeds up. When it opens out, the water slows down and it deposits its sediment. This is a basin, and you can see this is the sedimentary load being carried in the Bonneville flood. That's
1.21 Sverdrups.
Yes. Yeah. Randall and giant flood rolled boulders in the
Now wait,
Snake
is that the
River
original or the reproduction?
That's the original.
Okay, just making sure, because I know there was a reproduction that was done
Oh,
20
Dan.
years later. Yeah.
I need to get that into my program.
Dan
Yeah.
reproduced it.
Found that same
Nailed it.
boulder, wore the same shirt.
Yeah.
Same hat, same beard. Great.
Well, okay. I mean, we got to agree that he wasn't as good looking, but
Okay, it wasn't the same
It-
beard.
Alright,
it was an
yeah.
It was not the
impressive
same
effort.
beard.
there was a few things he had. He didn't quite, but it was close. Close enough that I was impressed.
Man,
Yeah, so look at there. Those are flood rolled boulders. And they've been laying there since whatever, 12 to 14,000 years ago when the Bonneville flood came through here. And, you know, no modern force, no modern flow of the river flood has really had much of an effect on these boulders. Yeah, that's a boulder bar, giant boulder bar near Swan Falls. Look at the human figure right here in the middle for scale. This is really the kind of landscape where you really get the sense, the direct perception of how the scale of these phenomena and how they utterly dwarf the human scale. So yeah, this would be
awesome.
a great tour. And here, of course, is Tammany Bar, where the Great Bonneville Flood met the Great Missoula Flood. And we've looked at that, so I'm not going to look at it again now. But
Yep.
yeah.
yeah, let's mention the rest of the donators and then we'll wrap
Yeah,
it up
let's
here.
do.
Someone unseen, $20, beer money, thanks. Defunct, $10, says she met you guys randomly at a Mexican restaurant in Sedona.
You definitely have to send all that beer money to me and Brad.
Yeah.
We'll make it. We'll really actually use it for what it's for, Randall.
William,
Yeah.
$10. James, $10, and then another $10. He's asking for book recommendations. What are your top 5 books of all time?
Ooh, jeez.
Josh,
you don't-
hold on. Let me finish these. Josh, $5. Justin, $5. Bruce Silva, $20. More beer money. Thanks to everybody who donated. Thank you so
Bruce,
much.
always good to hear
Bruce.
from you, Bruce. So books, yeah, we'll be coming up. What we're actually doing is we're creating a bookstore on HowTube, and that bookstore will have all of my favorite books, or at least starting some of my favorite books. We have to narrow it down. Books on history, on mythology, on astronomy, on geology, on mass extinctions, on catastrophism, you know, on architecture. I have favorite books in all of those subject matters. So, but yeah, so I'm going to be recommending books.
How about a book on masonry? He asked about a book on Freemasonry.
Ooh, well,
What's your top book on Freemasonry?
Okay, I'm going to make a note of that right now. There's a lot of books on Freemasonry, and there's been some new ones that I understand are fairly good, and some others that are probably doing the old, conspiratorial.
Sure.
You know, the Freemasons are but really any honest scholar that looks at it is not going to come to that conclusion that Freemasons are, you know, the elite puppet masters ruling the world. In spite of what certain people are trying to say and put out there.
Well, we're trying to
I will say, yeah, just as far as 20 years of listening to Randall talk about everything and books, I would say for sure the one that he's mentioned most often is Hamlet's Mill.
Yeah.
Sure.
And it is really difficult to get through, but there's a lot of worthwhile stuff in there, and it broke a lot of new ground and opened some doors for the research that's happened since then. Hamlet's Mill.
Earth in Upheaval. Path of the Pole.
Sure. Yeah, I like Path of the Pole a lot.
Yeah.
Even though I don't really, I think that the consideration of a crustal shift was valuable. I don't think that's the answer but what it is, it's a compilation of all of the evidence for catastrophes that kind of existed at that time, which was about the mid-70s. Which was a reissue of Hapgood's earlier book, which was don't remember. I never read the earlier version.
The Klube and Napier book. What's the Cosmic Serpent? What is it called?
Well, there's Cosmic Serpent and Cosmic Winter.
Yeah.
I think Cosmic Serpent was their first, came out in 1980, and Cosmic Winter I think was in 1990. So those definitely.
There you go.
Yeah.
There's some book recommendations.
Yeah. Anything by Klube and Napier is great. But yeah, I can do a whole recommend. I mean, obviously I've got a few books back there, and then you check this out here.
Magicians of the Gods.
Oh, yeah. I was going to say that too.
Yeah.
There's this really cool part in there with this weird guy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Graham travels with a strange guy in there at one point.
Yes.
He's got some wacky theories, but it's pretty good.
There's his book recommendations right there, y'all.
Screenshot.
Right there.
Let's just screenshot this.
This is my books on astronomy, impact geology, comets, asteroids, all that kind of stuff. And then this is all the books on geology, earth science, all of that kind of stuff. Mineralogy. Yeah, there's some good ones up there. You can see, and look there. Down there is Schwaller de Lubitsch, The Temple of Man.
Ah, yes, that's a good one too.
Yeah.
And the binders of scientific papers on those topics would take up a whole lot more space than those books do.
And
I'm pretty sure I saw a Far Side book in there.
Look, check that out up there. You see those binders? Those are several thousand scientific articles that I collected and read prior to internet days. Prior to internet days, and that's only half of them. I didn't have room for all of them, so I only had room for half of them. So
all right, well, thanks.
Might be of interest to people to know that. So yeah, I tell you what, Steven, who's helping me out, he's making a digital list of all of these books in this room. So as soon as he's got that done, I'll send that list out. And
excellent.
And you can see what are Randall's favorite books. Well, what is it, about 2,000 books in here, I guess?
Yeah.
That's awesome.
Hey,
that'll be the basis for the bookstore.
Peter Shell, $216. Thank you so much.
Hey, 216.
Yeah.
Stitches on a fastball, little boy.
Had a great time in Nashville. Thanks for being such a great teacher, he says. And then Joe Rob, $20. Thanks for all your wonderful content and knowledge. Cheers. Cheers to all of you in the chats, everybody who donated. Thank you guys so much.
And thanks for the donations to the HowTube account.
Yes.
I saw people mentioning that, and they will be checked out. Thank you so much.
Yes.
Yeah. Peter, thanks, man. I'm looking forward to hanging out with you in the Scablands and having some good laughs.
He also had some good observations there at the Parthenon, that the 12 zodiacal signs are represented on the front, and he's like, well, wait, Ophiuchus is missing. Wait, and then you go inside. Aha. So he's going to be talking to Dave Matheson about that. And as far as getting more info on him, he's done several podcasts with you guys, right? Brothers of the Serpent. So if they want to learn about Dave Matheson and then come out and see him in the Scablands, get in on those fast, because we're doing the first group Zoom call to introduce everybody and talk through the logistics coming up soon. So get in there and fill those tours up and be on that first Zoom call with us coming up next week, actually.
One last thing I'll quickly mention is that just to remind people that the site Sacred Geometry International is illegally selling my work using my likeness and my name. I get nothing from that. It all goes to the administrator of that website, and he is selling my 10-year-old unfinished beta course in sacred geometry. Do not buy that, because we've got an awesome new upgrade coming out soon.
Oh man, $100 for beer money. Thanks so much. And I actually do appreciate the sound updates, because I can't hear what's going out, but people mention it, and then I can actually fix it. So I hope I'm sorry if I was too loud.
Yeah, people in the chats, thanks for helping out. And yes, we got another $5 donation and $100 from Playford. More beer money.
Playford.
Yeah.
All right. God, listen, you guys.
Great. Thanks, y'all.
Thank you so much. Yeah. All right. Good night, everybody.
I enjoyed it. Yep. I wish I could have seen everybody that was listening in, but we'll see. Yep. Something will happen. Bye, guys.
All right. Good night, y'all. Good job. Get your class started on sacred geometry with the new live stream available now.